Good evening, everybody. I'm Dr. Lakshmi, and I would like to welcome you all to this webinar on behalf of Yashoda Hospitals. So today we have with us two senior consultants, Dr. Bhagya Lakshmi ma'am and Dr. Revati Sriram, who would be discussing about pelvic pain. So ma'am, we can go.
Yeah. Thank you, Lakshmi, for introducing me. I'm Dr. Bhagya Lakshmi from Yashoda Hospital, Secunderabad. I'm a gynecologist. On the eve, I would say on the eve of International Women's Day 2021, we thought it apt that we should discuss about a topic which is never discussed or talked about. Not many people ever discuss about pelvic pain. People talk about bleeding, people talk about chest pain, people talk about breast pain. They talk about everything, but somehow when it comes to pelvic problems or urinary incontinence or constipation or difficulty in passing urine or sexual dysfunctions, people find it very difficult and shy to discuss about these topics. So we thought that it is only apt that we discuss about pelvic pain and dysfunctions and how these things can most often be solved very simply by physiotherapy and by tender loving care and explaining how things are to be done, a few exercises. Many of these problems can be brought under control and the woman can lead a very comfortable life. So we thought it apt. So we will go on with this pelvic pain. Now, what is pelvic pain? It's a very vague term. So the pelvis is the area which comprises between the two hip bones, and this pelvis generally has the uterus, the entire genital organ, the bladder, the rectum. It has muscles and it has blood vessels, it has lymph nodes, it has nerves. So any problem with any of these organs can cause pelvic pain. And this pelvis is very well supported by muscles, which are like on the top, we have a diaphragm which separates us from the chest and the abdomen. And we have a diaphragm, pelvic diaphragm below, which is made up of levator ani muscle and the other small muscles to separate or to protect our organs from sagging down. So they support and protect our organs. So any pain perceived in the area of the pelvis, that is the lower part of the abdomen located between the hip bones, is called pelvic pain. It may be lower back, it may be thighs, it may be abdomen, it may be the pubic area, the genital area, the groin, hip, the coccyx area, or right in front of the pelvis. The pain may start from the tailbone, that is the coccyx, but it spreads throughout the muscles at the bottom of the pelvis floor to the rectum. That makes it difficult or painful to urinate or defecate. It's a vicious cycle. Any kind of disorder anywhere in the pelvis can reflect as pain in other organ. Like any kind of disorder anywhere in the pelvic floor can have an impact on any or all of the pelvic floor other functions. To go more in depth understanding, let's divide pelvic floor disorders into two major categories. So musculoskeletal disorders, the bladder, bowel, and sexual dysfunction. So musculoskeletal will be the muscle which is supporting the pelvis, like the levator ani muscles or the hip bones or the sacrum, the spine, and the coccyx. The organ would be the bladder, the bowel, that is the rectum, and the sigmoid colon also is there, and sexual functions, whereas the vagina and the external genital organs are concerned. By the same token, something as simple as constipation or diarrhea can cause spasm, tightening, or shortening of the musculoskeletal tissue in the pelvic floor, which in turn can cause pain up or down the core, like back, legs, genital area, groin, and hips. So that means even when you have a problem with your bowel or bladder, you can reflect it as a pain in the groin or pain at the back or pain in the legs. What's particularly vicious about this is that as the infection or inflammation or injury gets worse, it may cause the muscles to tighten and shorten. So more the muscles become tight and short, or more they become spasmodic, it causes more discomfort and more pain. And the muscles that control the urge and the opening for evacuation grow weak or impaired. That thus it will result in difficulty in either evacuation or retaining. So it can cause either loose motion or constipation or both. Or sometimes it is a mixture. Sometimes they have constipation, sometimes they have loose motions. That is because of a dysfunction of some muscles becoming spasmodic and some muscles become lax. You will experience strain, bloating in the lower abdomen, diarrhea, abdominal wall, and pelvic pain. Now, how does posture influence the pelvic pain? So actually the abdomen is like is a vertical box. So the diaphragm on top, the pelvic muscles at the bottom, the transverse abdominis and the abdominal muscles in the front, the spine and the muscles at the back. So all these muscles from top to bottom work in coordination. They all contract together or relax together. And this is maintained by adopting the proper posture. If the posture is abnormal, then the whole spine, the shape of the spine becomes abnormal. So some muscles go into spasm and this causes the pelvic pain. So a normal posture is like the first picture depicted, whereas when when the front becomes popping down in front, there is lordosis, and some people have both kyphosis and lordosis. So lower pelvis, lower part of the abdomen, when it is curvature is increased, it is lordosis, and when the upper part of the chest, the curvature at the back is increased, it is called kyphosis. So prolonged sitting can lead to overflexion of the coccyx, which can create disturbance in the pelvic floor muscle alignment. What are the pelvic floor muscles? We are talking so much about pelvic pain. We're talking about how the pelvic floor is supporting us. But what is it made up of? The pelvic floor muscles, the pelvis is like a hammock. Hammock is like a jula. So the pelvic floor is hammock-shaped group of muscles extending from the base of the spine at the back to the pubic bone in the front. So if this is the pubis and this is the coccyx, so there's a muscle going from back to front like a swing and from side to side. So the pelvic floor muscles, they are interconnected and work together as a unit and collectively help with tightening a loose vagina, urine control, supporting pelvic organs, and to enhance our intimate health. Now they are divided into three types: the superficial, the middle, and the deep layer. Now the superficial layer is the external genital muscles, or urogenital and anal. They again made up of urogenital and an anal triangle. In the front it is urogenital and it is the anal triangle at the back. So these muscles are superficial transverse perineal muscle, bulbocavernosus, ischiocavernosus, and at the back it is the anal sphincter. So these are the superficial muscles. Now what is in the middle layer? Middle layer is called the urogenital diaphragm. It is made up of deep transverse perineal muscle, external urethral sphincter, and compressor urethrae. Whereas the deep layer or the pelvic diaphragm is made up of the levator ani muscles. They are big muscles. This is again divided into small muscles called pubococcygeus, puborectalis, and iliococcygeus muscle and coccygeus muscle. Now this, I don't think we need to go into the depth of the muscles because it makes no sense. So we all know that there is a deep layer of muscle made up of levator ani. Then there is a middle layer made up of a urogenital diaphragm. And then we have the superficial muscles, that is about the musculature. So these are all the diagrams. Now, what are the functions of the pelvic floor muscles? These pelvic floor muscles perform 5 major functions. One is supportive. What is supportive? It supports all the organs. It supports the urethra, it supports the bladder, it supports the uterus and the vagina, it supports the rectum. So it supports all the blood vessels. So it forms a base on which all these are lying. Now, stabilization. So what is stabilization? So it stabilizes, like when you're coughing, it prevents the urine from leaking down, because when you're coughing, there is an increase in the intra-abdominal pressure. When you're sneezing, so the abdominal pressure increases. So whenever there is an increase in the abdominal pressure, it stabilizes the muscle so that there is no incontinence and there is no passage of feces or flatus or urine. So it stabilizes the organs. The other one is it has a sphincteric action. So these muscles, the levitrinae muscles, as they're going near the anus or as they're going around the vagina, they form sphincters. Around the urethra, they form sphincters. So they close these holes so that there is no leak. And these muscles, again, during an intimate relationship or during a sexual relationship, the contraction of these muscles give them more pleasure and more happiness. And they also help in the lymphatic drainage. What is lymph? Just like the vein drains all the bad blood, the lymphatics also remove a lot of bad secretions from the body and it goes up. And whenever there is no proper lymphatic action, there will be swelling of the legs. So supportive function, as I told you, it supports the rectum, it supports the uterus, it supports the bladder, the urethra, and the vagina. So and you can see in the diagram on the right side, the upper part is the diaphragm. So that is the top of the abdomen. The lower part is the pelvic floor, the pubic bone down. At the back is the multifidus and the sacrum bones. In the front is the transverse abdominis. So all these muscles, front, back, up and down, they surround our abdomen, and this is the core. As long as we keep all these core muscles intact, as long as we keep these core muscles working well, then the body is in equilibrium. All organs function perfectly well, and there is not much pain, there is not much dysfunction, there is not much leaks, and the woman leads a comfortable life along with adept sexual life. So what is the sphincteric action? Pelvic floor muscles help to maintain the urinary and fecal continence, especially the levator muscles interdigitate with the vaginal and rectal canal and encircle them to provide the tone and pressure to close the sphincters. And it also helps in the sexual and lymphatic function, as I already talked to you about. Now, why does a woman land in pelvic floor muscle dysfunction? Now, the God's creation is so great. He has given us a beautiful body, the muscles, proper muscles to function, and coordination of action of all these muscles. But because we abuse our body sometimes, and because of certain events that happen in a woman's life, then there is laxity of the muscles, and these cause pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. So, what are the most common causes? A teenager generally does not have any pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. Probably a youngster, a child can have, because the muscles are not good, then they will have incontinence of urine like bedwetting, or they pass urine in the underwear. So these are in the very young. But once they are trained, they do not have pelvic floor muscle dysfunction till they reach about, say, the college going, or till they reach about their job. Once they start taking up their career seriously, when they start sitting for a long time. So it is never seen in these teenagers, unless, of course, nowadays we have time watching TV all the time, playing video games all the time, and sitting and lying down in all wrong postures, again leading to severe. All youngsters also nowadays come with backache and pelvic pain. So the most common cause includes pregnancy, because in pregnancy the abdominal muscles are stretched, the posture is changed, the pressure on the levator muscles are increased. So that is how pregnancy causes some amount of pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. And labor, during labor, because the head that is about 9.2 centimeters has to come out, and the baby who weighs 2.5 to 3.5 kgs comes out through the narrow passage. There is so much of stretching of the vagina and stretching of all these muscles. It takes time for these structures to come back to normalcy, and to bring them back to normalcy, it needs to be trained, and it needs to undergo some type of physiotherapy. Childbirth, that is labor and childbirth, of course. Menopause, what happens in menopause? Just like the skin becomes loose and lax, all the other structures, the muscles also lose their tone and strength. So because of the lack of the estrogen hormones, menopause also causes some amount of laxity of these muscles, and thus cause some amount of prolapse of organs, some amount of incontinence of urine and incontinence of motion. Excessive weight gain. As the weight increases, generally we put on weight around the abdomen or around the girth. So the girth, abdominal girth continues to increase, and there is sagging of the anterior abdominal wall, sagging of the muscles. And so the bony structure also, the woman goes into abnormal posture, and then the shape of the bony structure also changes. The curvature of the spine changes, and thus again it causes some amount of dysfunction. So that's why obesity has to be avoided. Poor posture, wrong ergonomics again causes sedentary lifestyle, sitting for long time, and in the wrong posture again causes some amount of or a lot of pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. Diabetes, again in diabetes there is a lot of muscle wasting, which again causes dysfunction, and use of sometimes steroids. Steroids again causes some amount of obesity, and again laxity of muscles, muscle mass is lost, muscle strength is lost. Tobacco also is a cause, and tobacco causes excessive cough, and indirectly it can cause weakness of the muscles. Too much passive stretching through sexual overactivity, pelvic organ pathologies like, say, sometimes a woman has endometriosis, sometimes fibroids, huge tumors. All these can cause pelvic floor muscle dysfunction. And of course, trauma and burns also cause this type of dysfunction. So what are the different types of pelvic floor dysfunction? Now, there has to be an equilibrium between stability, mobility, and usability. So whenever there is an imbalance between the stability and the mobility, then it causes either a hypertonous pelvic floor dysfunction or the hypotonous pelvic floor dysfunction. So when the stability, that is when it becomes more tight, then it causes hypertonicity. So then the woman may have constipation, or may have retention of urine, wanting to go and pass urine more number of times. But because the sphincter becomes so tight, then she's not able to pass urine. She has the urge to pass, but she cannot pass. She only passes a few drops of urine, comes back. Again, she wants to go, and this becomes a vicious cycle. But when there is stability and the mobility at a balance, then it is a fit pelvic floor. When the mobility becomes more and the stability is less, that is when the tone of the muscle is less and the usage becomes more, then it becomes hypotonic. It becomes overstretched, and then you have incontinence, that is a loose motion or excessive passage of flatus, which is very, very embarrassing to the woman, or increased they want stress incontinence or urge incontinence. That is either when you cough or sneeze, the urine dribbles down or few drops of urine comes, or whenever you want to go to the washroom, but before they reach the washroom, particularly old women feel, women about 60 and all, feel very uncomfortable because even they feel scared to go out, step out of their home to go outside and all, because they are scared that before they reach the washroom, the urine might dribble. So it can cause urge incontinence. So whenever there is hypotonus, it causes urge or stress incontinence. Whenever there is hypertonus, it can cause urinary retention. So according to the American Physical Therapy Association, after there are 4 types of pelvic floor dysfunction. That is hypotonus, as I told you, when the muscle becomes very weak, or hypertonus, that is when the muscle becomes too, because of some reason or the other, it becomes hypertonic, say post-operative, because of the spasm, the muscle goes into spasm. Whenever there is endometriosis and there is scarring, the muscle goes into spasm. Or when the incoordination, sometimes, so the abdominal muscles work in one way and the pelvic muscle works in a different way. So there is no coordination. All the muscles don't contract together or relax together. Some muscles are contracting, some muscles are relaxing. So it causes incoordinate dysfunction or visceral dysfunction, like whenever there is a prolapse of the uterus or whenever there's a big fibroid causing pressure. So these are all the 4 different types of pelvic floor dysfunctions that are seen commonly. So when do you see hypertonus pelvic dysfunction? It becomes, as I told you, it becomes too spasmodic and the muscles fail to relax. Following in some of the conditions like piles, proctalgia, Leber-Rane syndrome, coccydynia, pelvic. So whenever there is infection, there is scarring. Whenever there is vulvar vestibulitis, whenever there is any inflammation, the muscles go into a spasm. So when they go into spasm, it becomes hypertonus. So urethral syndrome, urgency, frequency, incomplete. So it causes interstitial cystitis, urethral syndrome. Sometimes constipation. Because of constipation, they develop fissure. Because of constipation, they develop piles. And pelvic floor muscle painful tightness and anxiety. When do you have hypotonic pelvic floor dysfunction? That is, the floor muscle becomes very loose, it becomes weak, overly stretched muscle. So what are the causes? It is in underuse of these muscles or disuse atrophy. So when you're not contracting the muscles properly, vaginal laxity after pregnancy and childbirth, changes in hormone due to menopause, decreased muscle tone due to aging, straining because of chronic constipation. So initially it is spasm, then it becomes loose. So pelvic organ prolapse, overweight and obesity, chronic cough, disease or surgery in the pelvic region, then overweight, poor posture, sedentary lifestyle, all these things causes hypotonic pelvic floor dysfunction. So now to the left, we see a normal pelvic floor where the rectum, the spine, the rectum, the uterus, and the bladder, they are all in synchrony. They are all kept in position, the proper position. So it is all in harmony. It is in equilibrium. The pubic bone, all these are in the right, they are all in the right alignment. But when the pelvic floor weakens, you can see that the bladder is descended down, the uterus is descended down, and the anal sphincter is opening up, even when the woman is not defecating. So these are the different pictures where it's a normal anatomy to the total to the right, and then comes the prolapsed. Once when the bladder moves down, it's called a prolapsed bladder. Sometimes the rectum moves down, so you have a rectocele. Then when the uterus also prolapses down, it moves down from its original position. It's called a prolapsed uterus. And sometimes the uterus comes outside. And unfortunately, this happens in women who have born more number of children, more than 3, 4, or who have had difficult labor, or who have not undergone proper physical exercise after delivery, who just goes back to work and continues to do their homely activities and do not give enough exercise to the muscle. And these problems come not immediately, but after a few years, slowly it happens. And women are so shy to come and tell us that the organ is moved down a little, or whether the urine is dribbling. They come to us at a stage when it is completely the uterus has moved down. So it is very important that you should not feel shy when you have a problem. The problem is small. After all, let me tell you, every woman in her life, sometime or the other, will definitely have this pelvic floor dysfunction. And it is mandatory that you go to your doctor. Revati will be telling you how to do your self-examinations to assess your own pelvic floor tone and activity. And whenever you feel that it is not good, whenever you feel the tone is not good, or whenever you feel it's too lax, it's always better to go to your doctor, have yourself checked, go for proper physiotherapy so that things then can be corrected very, very quickly, easily by simple exercises, and you can lead a very comfortable life without having to feel shy that something wrong has happened to you. So now this is incoordinate action, toned pelvic floor. So it is a hammock, droopy pelvic floor hammock. So difficulty to create or complete sequencing of pelvic floor, abdominal muscle contraction and relaxation, or it can be present with combination of 2 or more types of pelvic floor dysfunction. That is incoordinate or combined dysfunction. Now, how do we prevent pelvic floor dysfunction? See, we see approximately 35 million women suffer from urinary incontinence and 54% from some type of female sexual dysfunction, and 9 out of 10 mothers from vaginal laxity. Feminism is not about making women stronger. Women are already strong. It is about changing the way the world perceives their strength. Pelvic floor strength will change the way she perceives her own strength. Women's life cycle affects the pelvic floor, not only the heart, not only the kidneys, not only the hands, legs, brain, but the pelvic floor is also a very, very important organ to have stability, to have strength, to have sphincter action, to have sexuality, and to have proper lymphatic drainage, and to lead a comfortable life. What are the different managements that we have? Conservative management, that is physiotherapy in treating pelvic floor dysfunction, which is very, very effective. And the surgical management, which include laparoscopic surgeries, like whenever pelvic laparoscopic surgeries, wherein we give mesh, we give slings, we pull the organs up and we give a sling or a mesh and attach it to the sacral bone so that these things are held in place. But this surgery is not going to correct the pelvic floor strength. This has to be done by exercise. And local pelvic floor repairs are also done, where we do perineal pelvic floor repairs, and then we give transvaginal tapes. And off late, there is also laser procedure, which is a non-invasive procedure for the functional strengthening of the connective tissue inside the vaginal wall, which improves the pelvic floor support and diminishes the symptoms of pelvic floor dysfunction and sexuality. So that is in short about pelvic floor dysfunction, and wish you all a very happy Women's Day. Now Revati will take over and she will tell you about the different types of managements.
Thank you, ma'am. I think this session was very informative, considering that this topic is not very commonly talked about among the general population, even though it's a common disorder, what we all encounter day-to-day life. So thank you very much. We have our next speaker, Dr. Revati, childbirth educator, pelvic floor rehab specialist from Yashoda Hospital, Secunderabad.
Thank you, ma'am. Good evening. I'm Dr. Revati. I'm pelvic floor rehab specialist, physiotherapist, and childbirth educator. So we will just go with a brief note about the muscles and ligaments associated with the pelvis. We can see in the image where it is like a hammock-shaped structure, which is holding the organs in proper position. And assessment of pelvic floor muscles, we go with the subjective and objective. We'll be taking the history of patient age, habits, occupation, chief complaints like pain, discomfort, heaviness at the pelvic area, past history of injury, trauma, childbirth, surgeries, pelvic organ prolapse. Assessment of posture, vaginal and rectal examination, external palpation of urogenital triangle or anorectal triangle, internal palpation of deep pelvic floor muscles, EMG biofeedback. So external observation, we go with the gait pattern. Gait pattern is the way we walk. So walking is very important in assessing, where the hip muscles will be coordinated with the pelvic floor muscles. So when there is any dysfunction in the pelvic floor or the hip muscles, the gait pattern will be changing. So we'll be assessing the gait and the posture also. The proper posture to be maintained, that is straightly standing, and we can see in the second image where we have hollow back, flat pelvis, slumping posture, military posture, and round shoulders. These postures try to get the low back pressure and intend to get pelvic floor dysfunctions. So postural assessment is also VC. The most commonly affected muscles are the hip muscles, because it is closely associated with the pelvic floor. So we check with the trigger points and any facial restrictions all over the hip area. So we go with the hip external rotators, hip internal rotators, hip flexors. These are the muscles we go with the checking with the muscle length, and any trigger points also we will be noting. The perineal observation. Here there are two types of observation. One is static and the other one is dynamic observation. In static observation of skin, identification of the structures and their symmetry, scar, edema, redness, episiotomy, and bulge. Here in the image, there are degree of perineal tears, where the perineal tears is an indication of pelvic floor dysfunctions. So we'll be seeing this in the dynamic observation. The perineum is from the urethra to the anus. So this complete area will be checking when in dynamic contraction, like we'll tell them to squeeze the urinary and anal passage muscles. So we'll see the contraction over here, and we tell them to cuff. So we'll see the inward and outward movement of the perineum. The next is transvaginal examination. Here, indications are vaginal laxity, incontinence, pelvic pain, prolapse, history of sexual dysfunctions. Absence of contraindications are the absence of patient written consent, severe vaginitis and infection, menstrual, pregnancy, sexual abuse, severe pelvic pain, age below 18 and pediatric patients, physicians, restrictions and surgery, and recent radiotherapy. So pelvic floor rehabilitation will include the patient education. So we need to tell the patient regarding the condition and the treatment protocol like exercises, mobilization, and the modalities. In hypertonous pelvic floor dysfunction, where the pelvic floor muscles are very taut. So here, when not to do Kegels is like just going with the squeeze in at the urinary and anal passage. What it does if it is done in a hypertonus, when it is already in tight position, if they go ahead with squeezing, they are getting into spasms. So it's not to do Kegel activities in tight pelvic floor muscles. So the therapeutic exercises and techniques for PFM will include relaxation exercises, Glaser protocol, paradoxical relaxation, Weiss-Anderson technique, mobilization, and myofascial release. It is a small kneading pattern. We do it at the trigger area, that is a myofascial release. And modalities we use like electromyography, TENS, transcutaneous electrical nerve stimulation, ultrasound, cryotherapy, moist pack, and the stretching exercises and coordinating training. Sitz bath will be very helpful in hypertonous pelvic floor muscle as the muscle relaxes and blood circulation will be more prominent. In the Glaser protocol, as we see in the image, can you find the core? So mainly the diaphragm at the top and the down there are the pelvic floor muscles. Whenever breathe in movement, when we are taking breath in through the nose, what happens? The belly will be out. At the same time, imagine this is a lift. This is a ground floor, first, second, and third, -1, -2, -3. This is the urinary passage. So whenever the breathe in, what happens? The belly will be out, and at the same time, it will go into relaxation. So in this relaxation position, you have to hold for 10 seconds. It has to be done for 10 repetitions in a set wise. Total repetitions can be 60 repetitions, time needed to be 20 minutes. And the relaxation exercise, whenever you're doing, make sure you're on empty bladder. And evaluation of pelvic tone. So place 1 or 2 fingers in the vagina and to contract the pelvic floor muscle, that is the levator ani muscles, then gauge her the ability to contract these muscles as well as strength, symmetry, and duration of the contraction. So here we follow the Oxford scale. 0 is no contraction, 1 is a flicker of contraction, 2 is weak, 3 is moderate, 4 is good, and 5 is strong. So these are the trigger points in levator ani muscle. We go with the scooping method to go transvaginally to release the triggers. So this is the electromyography. This is used as a pressure biofeedback. So this pressure biofeedback, these down, there are vaginal sensors and the anal sensors. What happens? If the sensor will be placed into the vagina, and when the patient is contracting or going to the relaxation, so the graphical picture will be noted on the screen. So it is used in hypertonous pelvic floor muscles and hypotonous pelvic floor muscles for the muscular activity, their strength, and we give them the targets to be attained. And these are the pelvic floor stretching exercise. Basically, these are the pelvic openers and hip stretches. Usually you can see the butterfly opening. So this is going to stretch the muscle, and coordinating training is important over here. So as earlier I told you, the relaxation will be going down to -1, -2, and getting back to the ground floor. So whenever we are opening, getting into the relaxation, breathe in, belly out, going with the relaxation. Whenever we are closing, it has to be to the normal. Okay, this is the exercise. And the other very good exercise for the good stretch of the pelvic floor is a butterfly. Butterfly is a flapping movement of which gives a good stretch and good blood circulation over there. In this, the other image where you can see the correct posture in doing the breathing activity. In the first image, whenever the breathing in, the belly will be out and the squeeze in will be happening. And incorrect is when you are breathing in and the abdomen is going out, that is an incorrect. Whenever you're breathing through the nose, what happens? The belly will be out. At the same time, the chest will go into the lateral direction, to the sidewise. Whenever you're breathing, it should not lift up. This is a wrong pattern of breathing. So the correct diaphragmatic training is important, coordinating with the pelvic floor. So we are coordinating the diaphragm muscle as well as, which is between the chest and the abdomen, main muscle for the breathing, and the pelvic floor muscle at the base. So we are training coordinatingly in all the activities we train. So we can see squats and normal breathing in Vajrasana position, just sitting on knees and doing the breathing activities for the relaxation, and bird and dog position. And here in this image, you can see how if you're incoordinatively moving the diaphragm, what it affects. See here, whenever it is breathing in, the pelvic organs are going up, where the pelvic floor muscles are going to the proper, where the belly is coming out. So here, this pattern of breathing is very important. These are the pelvic floor stretches. These are the pelvic openers, we call it as. And these are the butterfly. These are the wall sequence, where placing the legs on the wall gives a good blood circulation, mainly the pudendal artery, which supplies to the pelvic floor, which is a levator ani muscles, will get stimulated. The blood circulation will be more prominent. So these asanas will be more helpful in pelvic floor dysfunction in hypertonus. And in hypotonus, we will tell them to do with the Kegel activities, that is contracting the urinary and the anal passage. So hypotonus dysfunction, mainly the strength, means ability to completely contract and relax. Here, now we spoke about the relaxation phase. Now we'll go with the Kegels, which is the contraction of the urinary passage as well as the anal passage. So whenever you're squeezing in, and you need to relax it as well. So whenever you're breathing in, don't do anything at the pelvic floor. Whenever you're leaving the air through the mouth, then go with the pelvic floor squeeze and holding seconds for 10. Do it at the 3 sets. This has to be repeated. The repetition should be there. The number of reps at best possible hold. And fast twitch, just going squeeze and down, squeeze and down. Whenever you're doing with the Kegel activity, don't hold your breath, because you are even activating your diaphragm muscle. Whenever you're squeezing in, even the diaphragm has to get activated. So if you're squeezing in and holding in that position, make sure you breathe in and breathe out. Just the chest expansion to the side and to get back. Still maintaining that hold of contraction. And EMG biofeedback and strengthening exercises, because it is a lax pelvic floor, so strength training is important. Here down in the image, I've placed a jellyfish. So think about how jellyfish swims to learn to contract and relax your pelvic floor muscles. See, lift up, contract as you relax. Whenever you leave the air through the mouth, just go with the contraction. Means the mainly squeezing the urinary and the anal passage. Whenever you're breathing in, just relax it down, just like a jellyfish. The target muscle group of training is the core. As Dr. Bhagyalakshmi ma'am told about the core, which is very, very important. If we only focus on pelvic floor muscles, the core activations will not be possible. So you have to engage all the core muscle activities like multifidus, diaphragm, abdominals, and the pelvic floor. It has to work in a coordinating movement. So whenever you're doing a breathe-in pattern, definitely your core is activating, your diaphragm is activating, your abdominals is activating, as well as with the pelvic floor muscles. So we have to make a target of these muscles and strengthening the back muscles, the abdominals, mainly the obliques, internal and external oblique muscles, transverse abdominis, and the pelvic floor and the breathing activity. So you can see here, these are the pelvic tilts. We call it as pelvic rotations. Just pressing the back down. In sitting also, try to press the back down where the pelvic tilts, anterior and the posterior, will be going on. So this exercise will be helping in low back training. And pelvic floor strengthening, where we can see the image over here, assisted heel dropping. This is mainly for the core. So it intends to coordinate all the muscles as a group and training with the squeeze in. So squeeze in, hold, and do the movement and relax. So we are coordinating the Kegel activity with the movement. And these are the hip trainers. Hip, usually the just out and in. When pressing the ball, we are training the hips as well. And the ball training, where sitting on the ball is very important. In pregnancy, pelvic pains are more common because of the incorrect standing position or prolonged sitting position in everyone. So in mainly pregnancy, definitely the gravity will be straightly down. So the moreover, the pressure will be on the bladder and the diaphragm. So these pressure over the pelvic floor muscles will be common, and that intense goes to the pelvic floor dysfunctions, mainly the pelvic pains. So the groin region and the back muscles, the hip muscles will go into a tender pains. So myofascial release as well as the hot pack application will be helpful for them. And these ball exercises will be training for the pelvic floor strengthening. So these exercises are just sitting on the ball, just rotating the ball in clockwise movement and anti-clockwise, forward, back, and side to side. This is very good in pregnancy, where the perineal stretch will be happening. So for the normal delivery, it will be helpful. So these are the strength training exercises in hypotonous pelvic floor dysfunctions. And in pregnancy also, the core must be a major thing. Core activations should be there for the normal delivery, or mainly the mother should stay fit. And the prevention is better than cure. Don't feel shy about the pelvic floor concerns. Please go ahead to the physician and just address it, and make sure your pelvic floor exercises is going on. And thank you so much, and happy Women's Day.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Revati, for this informative session. So if we can take up a few questionnaires, what we have. Is hormone replacement useful for chronic pelvic pain and dysfunction? Dr. Bhagyalakshmi, ma'am?
At what age? Hormone replacement comes only for women with menopause or surgical menopause in young ladies where the ovaries have to be removed for whatever reasons like endometriosis and all. So HRT is not a very simple thing. HRT can be given for, as I told you, very young ladies who are not very obese and who do not have blood pressure, who do not have the history of deep vein thrombosis, family history of diabetes, hypertension. So there are quite a few contraindications for HRT. But yes, it can be tried to improve the muscle tone, because absence of estrogens definitely causes laxity of the muscles. So in the initial phase, when they are having difficulty, a lot of problems, yeah, for a short period of time, we can try with hormones. But it has to be added on with good nutrition is a very important thing. Having adequate proteins, doing regular exercise, and following proper pelvic floor exercises will help them. Only HRT may not be of much use. Yeah.
We have another question. Will the pelvic pain affect the fertility?
Yes, indirectly. If there is a lot of pelvic pain, people go either into vaginismus or they do not have proper regular sexual activity. So obviously, when they have severe pain during intercourse, that's called dyspareunia. So they are not able to perform properly, because this pelvic pain can be because of endometriosis also, which is causing so much of pain. Endometriosis itself can cause chronic pelvic pain, or vascular changes in the vascularity can cause this chronic pelvic pain. And in such people, the sexual life is altered. So because of altered sexual life also, these people are more prone to infertility. And of course, you have to address the root cause. That is, if it is endometriosis or a pelvic inflammatory disease or due to a lot of adhesions inside, these things have to be handled.
Dr. Revati, I think this question is for you. should these pelvic exercises be done only after the childbirth, or can it be taken up during the pregnancy or even before the pregnancy is planned to prevent it?
Definitely during pregnancy, they can go with the Kegel activities. Mainly they are strengthening their muscles. Why it is important is for the normal delivery, what happens, the pubococcygeus, the levator ani muscle will expand and the baby will come out and it will go back to its strength. It will lose its 50% of its strength. So during pregnancy, the Kegel activations is important as well as post-delivery as well. And cesarean or the normal, the pelvic floor has to be activated. And post 6 weeks, core training is also important.
Okay. Okay, thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Bhagyalakshmi, ma'am, and thank you, Dr. Revati. I think this was a wonderful session and very informative for both for the doctors as well as the general population, because this topic is like considered taboo in India and as well as many other countries.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for your time and for your session. Thank you. And
Thank you, Lakshmi. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
అసలు వచ్చారా పార్టిసిపెంట్స్? కొంతమంది వచ్చారు.